Good evening once again in Hawaii. We say aloha. Aloha. Thank you. No picture. I don't know you.
When Hawaiians sing, and we sing a lot, they often use one line in songs that goes, Haina ia mai ana kapuana. It means, let the story be told. We all have our own unique stories, but we can see our reflections in stories of other people. We all play with terms like culture, religion, politics, war, or peace, but in reality, we are talking about human beings and their feelings, beliefs, and actions. This is a voyage through time into the history of island people, in the footsteps of some natives of the Hawaiian Islands who lived long time ago. This is the story of a handful of young men who had great impact in the islands in the time of transition into the modern era. They were key figures during most significant changes. They were the first Christian teachers to their own people. Yes, they were Christians in an era when Hawaii had just entered relations with Christian nations and the rest of the world. They received Western education in America when there was no modern education at all in Hawaii. Modern after 19th century standards, and when America was still very young, and they came back to Hawaii with the first pioneer missionaries from New England. They were natives of Owhyhee. By getting to know these young men, you will get to know their Hawaii, the island ways of life, the challenges and joys of island people. These young men are representatives for people of all nations who have been forgotten and should be remembered, and also for all those whose roles in history have never been fully recognized. Their stories will give you insights into the ancient days in the Hawaiian Islands and how it came that Christianity visited our shores to stay. Haina ia mai ana kapuana. Let the story be told.
Suns for her eyes.
Hawaii's history did not begin with Kamehameha, the famous chief who created a kingdom in these islands. The volcanic landmass that is today known as Hawaii has been a stage of history ever since the lava rocks became home to immigrants of many species.
In the early stages of human evolution, before agriculture, people had to move all around to keep finding food resources. And as they moved, they intermarried, they intermixed, they would separate for some period of time, but they'd come back together again.
Races really don't exist in the human species because when you look at us genetically and even physically, anatomically and physiologically, we're very much more alike than different.
Who were the first people in Hawaii? Many different opinions compete for the truth, and they are using speculation, research, and legends.
My students say to me, Kumu, do you really believe that we were born of these islands? And I tell them, we have lived here for so long, we don't remember the first people who came here. We don't remember them.
The first voyages into the Pacific Ocean from various continental origins, many thousands of years ago, over time extended deeper into the ocean. This was perhaps inspired by the discovery of more and more clusters of islands.
There's little doubt these days that Hawaiians originated somewhere in Southeast Asia, and they migrated across the Pacific into Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, and then dispersed from there to what's usually thought to be the Marquesas, and then from the Marquesas to Hawaii.
There are actually many theories about how the Pacific was populated and by whom. Once people lived in the Pacific, some islands may have gotten overpopulated, or perhaps there was violent political conflict or religious persecution. So voyagers kept traveling as far as Hawaii. For example, the term land seeking was known as Henua Inanna, or ground of the men, which was the early name of the Marquesa Islands.
Archaeologists attest that there wasn't just one colonizing voyage from the Marquesas Islands up to Hawaii. But not too many people think that it was like a traffic pattern that people were going back and forth every year or so.
The relatively recent discovery of the Lapita cultures in Melanesia have helped us to trace the comings of the Polynesians out of Southeast Asia and their particular route into Polynesia. One of the things we would always say is that there was no pottery in Polynesia, and it's ironic that now we trace it through pottery fragments that we have from the Lapita tradition. Some of that pottery is decorated with some very interesting patterns. Patterns that we see again in tattooing and in bark cloth manufacture in Hawaii. Of course, those are very simple motifs, and they could be independently invented. Nevertheless, it's part of a pattern of many bits of evidence that we have that trace the origins of Polynesians.
You have to think of Hawaii as part of the whole Pacific. The people's knowledge of the past extends to migrations and beyond.
There was a period of making us the lost tribe of Judah. Then there is a period that we were Aryan. And only in recent times, with the coming of archaeology and anthropology, do they talk of Hawaiians or Polynesians as being a mixed race. In other words, there are different trends of thought.
We routinely use information that is coming out of the Human Genome Project to link all populations back through an ancestral lineage. Wherever we're following these lines of evidence, we usually come up with a mixed population. We never see something that we would like to think of potentially, ideally in our minds, as a unique, unmixed group, an isolate which is pure. What we see is that humans are pretty mixed up as a group.
Really, we are all from the same stock, if you will. We all share a common humanity, and we are all related. It just depends on how far back you go.
Legends about the hero Maui, for example, appear throughout Polynesia and on the Pacific Rim. They suggest that there were ancient connections, like the stories about lizards that did not exist in Hawaii until a few centuries ago.
Mo'o in Hawaiian does mean lizard, but not the small common household lizard that we see today. It was a huge entity, and stories abound here about these lizards. These mo'o, you might say, lived within the supernatural world, the predecessor's world.
If you are people without the modern convenience of the TV and radio and all this literature, storytelling is a major part of your education.
The concept of mo'o was with all of the Polynesians, Micronesians, Melanesians, Indonesia, even in Chinese, Japanese, lore. If you look in the Pacific Rim, actually, there is a mo'o deity or a lizard-like deity in almost all cultures.
Mo'o was a word that described unborn life in the womb of the mother, a fetus that is in many species formed like a lizard.
We all moles, you're all moles, no matter where you came from, unless you come from Mars.
In the understanding of our history by our ancestors and the teachings of those ancestors, we are told that Papahanau Moku, the Earth Mother, slept with Wakea, the Sky Father. And from them were born the Hawaiian Islands, the taro plant, and then the Hawaiian people.
Certain myths about creation and immigration are today taught at universities, but others have been forgotten. The story that is best known tells us that the first Hawaiian was a taro plant. Another story says he was made of lepo, which means earth or dirt. Different immigrants brought different myths. And then there is science.
We've been able to show that in Hawaii, we see genotypes which are shared with people in Tahiti. We see the same genotype shared with people of Tonga and New Zealand. And if we go in an opposite direction, going east, we see a genotype which is shared among Eastern Micronesians. We see in Western Micronesia people have connections even to Australia and New Guinea.
In the variety of arts that we have from Hawaii, there are some traits that actually even look Southeast Asian. These images are probably ancestral ideas that are expressed and maintained through Hawaii, Central Polynesia, Melanesia, and certainly into Indonesia, where it's very, very common. Interestingly enough, if you look at the sculpture, it looks most like New Zealand or Aotearoa and Easter Island, Rapa Nui, which is very interesting because these islands lie at the periphery of Polynesia, as far away from each other as they could possibly be. And yet their art looks most like each other.
There are people in Hawaii who said that we descended from heaven and land on Oahu.
The Hawaiians are not a homogeneous people that all came from one place all at the same time with one religion, with one philosophy. No, they came from different places at different times with different ideas, underlying similarities.
The concept of mo'o deals with genealogy from the time when only the gods walked the land all the way till now. It predated the settlements in Hawaii. In other words, the story of the mo'o came with them even though the mo'o itself did not.
The major part of the religion in the Pacific really comes from Ra'iatea, not from Tahiti. Ra'iatea and the heiau there, or the marae there called Tapu Tapu Atea, is the center of a pan-Polynesian religion and political alliance. It's called Hauatea, the alliance of Wakea. In Ra'iatea, it is the god Ta'aroa or Tangaroa or Kanaloa, who is the great god who makes the universe. And he creates or has as his son a god named Atea. We call him Wakea, the Sky Father. And I believe the religion was one of navigation and of astronomy and of understanding what times of the year, what times of the moon are best for planting and for increasing the fertility and production of the land.
People have always wondered, were ancient navigators looking for land on purpose, or was Hawaii found by accident when boats and canoes drifted? People of many origins landed here through thousands of years, so I think they came in many ways.
Thor Heyerdahl was an explorer from Norway, and he built a raft similar to that of the Inca people.
The successful execution of the Kon-Tiki expedition does not of itself provide proof of the validity of my theory of racial migration. What it proved was that the Polynesian islands are within reach of prehistoric vessels from Peru, and that primitive man can undertake limitless voyages across the ocean.
Thor Heyerdahl left Peru and landed in Polynesia after 101 days, just drifting without any steering.
The natives were most interested in finding out what sort of boat had managed to land us safe and sound through the breakers on the windward side of the reef. When they waded out and saw the Kon-Tiki, they exclaimed that this wasn't a boat, it was a pei-pei. Tay chief, who spoke French, explained that pei-pei was the name of the sort of vessels described in the ancestral legends. Pei-pei, or rongo-rongos of this kind, were well known in the past and were used by their distant ancestors for ocean voyages. The oldest of the natives knew numerous myths and legends that were of great interest in this context. These even included a song about the Maui, a relation of Tiki, which stated in so many words that he had arrived from a country to the east at sunrise.
Shipwrecks of strangers long time ago are also recorded in our chants, and there were voyagers who took their canoes and paddled out into the open sea from all kinds of places. And they knew that they would either die or they would find new land.
Later, once Hawaii was known in the Pacific, immigrants came with voyaging canoes and brought plants and animals and women.
The Hawaiians were incredible navigators, probably the best the world has ever seen in the distant past. They had the ability to travel to the continental areas on both sides of the Pacific, and certainly there were some cultural exchanges.
The prehistoric era in these islands is full of mysteries, unsolved mysteries, but a dramatic turning point in history is recorded in our oral traditions, the migration of warrior chieftains from other parts of Polynesia. They got to be known as ali'i, It's not clear where this word comes from, but it usually means chiefs. There are so many stories about chiefs and how they came from far away. Our oral traditions are incredibly complex. What all those ali'i have in common is that they felt they were born to rule.
At some point in ancient history, the Tahitians broke away from the people of Raiatea and set up their own religion.
The most influential migrating chiefs in Hawaii's history were of Tahitian origin. That's what our traditional stories tell us. But our ancestors, ali'i or not, really came from many places.
As they progressed, they brought with them, they picked up along the way and continued their journey into the Pacific. I mean, even the lei, it's a practice in India. It's a practice in the Philippines.
The term menehune is often used to describe the earliest settlers in the islands. Some sources say that they were a prehistoric race throughout the Pacific. Others think they were dwarfs with superhuman abilities. The word menehune may come from manahuna, which means little power or hidden power.
We hear about little people, menehune, who lived on Kauai. They built fabulous heiau temples. They built wonderful fish ponds all in one night. They're great builders. They cut stone. They fit the stone together so well that they last hundreds of years, and you can see that on Kauai in the so-called menehune ditch. What we should know is that in Tahiti itself, not in the Marquesas, but in Tahiti, there are traditions of a people called manahune who are great artisans.
We traveled here 2,000 years ago, and when the whole world thought that the earth was flat and Jesus Christ was just being born, we were on the last leg of our journey, navigating across the Pacific Ocean.
If you were to ask me, can I identify Native Hawaiians as separate from all other people? The answer is no. I could identify someone who had a Polynesian genotype, but I couldn't say for sure that that person was Hawaiian and not Tahitian or Maori or someone from the Cook Islands.
So who do you pray to? Why do you pray? How do you pray? And who do you call on? That's kind of important in your makeup, eh?
Ali'i clans kept arriving through several centuries, and their idol was a spirit of conquest. Therefore, they began to struggle for control over the local society that was here when they arrived.
And that society was recognizing that we all come from the same place, that same creator.
People were judged on their behavior, not by their color, by their race, by their creed. They were judged by their behavior.
The kupuna were there to guide, through their life experience, can they share what they have learned as we walked upon this place, on these islands. And our Makua generation were there to make sure that we had the things that we needed to have to survive, to do the planting, to do the fishing, to do the gathering, to do the structures, and to do it in such a manner that the younger generations that were coming up would see the merit of it.
Under the new cults of the ali'i, the locals had to change their lifestyle. Many of our traditional stories tell how the old ways were suppressed. The keepers of ancient knowledge were sometimes killed, especially on Molokai, where I come from. People resisted the ali'i. They kept having a lot of respect of Molokai people. The island was called Moku Pule'o'o, the island of the powerful prayer. At that time, not only priests prayed, many in the community knew how to call on the forces of nature and inside oneself.
I think there were always natural leaders, and in society, choices had to be made, and that there were those that information was given and decided upon. So I don't think that that was so far removed. But what I do think was more removed was the fact that now you would approach this other being who has more status and therefore is more recognized by the creative, by the gods, to speak in your behalf.
After a while, ali'i and their priests ruled over everything, everywhere.
The laws and legends they brought spread fear and respect among the local people.
But for me, and as a practitioner of what is a Hawaiian, to speak directly to that what I acknowledge as the creator through chant, through this language that has existed through the beginning of time, is a direct personal conversation. I think that was changed. That was the most significant thing to my mind, because now only the select few could chant. And if you had something that you wanted guidance with, you had to go talk to the ones that were selected. That was a big shift.
They gave us orders and called us commoners, is recorded from one 18th century Hawaiian elder from Molokai. But she said we were not commoners. We were the ancient ones who had lived here many generations before they invaded our shores.
The arrival of one very powerful man by the name of Pa'ao on Hawaii Island is one of the best known legends. Some people think that he may have been first in the era of aggressive chiefs. But when you read the genealogies, Pa'ao was only one of many ambitious ali'i.
He came around the 1000 AD, possibly 100 years earlier. But there already was a society here. To a great extent, what we think of as Hawaiian sculpture, or what we think of as Hawaiian religion, is the sculpture and religion associated with the Big Island and with its rulers and the descendants of Pa'ao's traditions. When we look at the art of Kauai, we see something occasionally that looks very much like the art of the Marquesas. The original inhabitants of these islands are thought to have come from the Marquesas.
Some people say Pa'ao might be from Samoa because he's said to come from Upolu, or he's said to come from Vava'u. And Vava'u is in Tonga, and Upolu is in Samoa. So he comes from Samoa, he comes from Tonga. Who is he? The Samoans are ready to say, we took over you Hawaiians a long time ago because Pa'ao. But Pa'ao's not in their lineage, I'm sorry. And the religion he brings here is the religion of Taputapuatea. He brings the religion of Ra'iatea. And interestingly enough, the old name of Ra'iatea was Hawaii.
Some people even say he was a priest. Others believe he was a chief. With him, again, new ways arrived.
When Pa'ao arrived in the Hawaiian Islands, he established a main heiau at Waha'ula. Waha'ula, it means red mouth, and it refers to the feeding of human sacrifices to Ku, the image of the god of war. And it was that religion that spread to the other parts of the island.
Pa'ao is mentioned in many stories in many generations.
Some people will even say that the Pa'ao story is a mythic way of talking about changes that occurred within Hawaiian society in place, in situ, without any external influence.
When power arrives here, the social structure of Hawaii was such that he deemed it unworthy of Polynesia in general, let's say.
Some voices say that the reason was that there was no distinct chiefly class, at least not a very dominant one. People had a lot of personal freedom.
That's what was taught, that I would survive, that you would survive, that I would be the fullness of myself. And so I would strive to be that fullness of myself in whatever it is that I might understand my gifts or my talents to be.
And so it was more like heads of households having a particular area under their influence, and that sometimes they might have conflicts with other heads of households, but not island-wide warfare as far as we know.
You go back and you do the research and of all the different facts and things that has been gathered from the historians, and you listen to the different mo'olelo of this clan came at this time and this migration, and this clan came at this time and this migration. It causes you to ponder on, so is that how it was even pre the ali'i?
Other stories say that there was chaos here just because we had no real leaders. Others again say that some ali'i just needed an excuse to play out their ambitions.
You have native day kupuna, who certainly have lots of information which was passed down through the generations in a oral historical form. You have written histories of 19th century, in many cases native Hawaiian scholars, and you have the observations made by Western sailors on vessels who were just observing things they didn't even really understand that well. What we have to do from these disparate sources is come up with a way to better understand how to combine them, what is valuable in each one.
There are stories of golden ages that came and went, which means there were times that have been recorded in legends of peace throughout the islands.
When you look at Hawaiian chants and legends, there is so much going on, so far back, and all the stories are deeply symbolic.
Like many of their relatives across the Pacific, the Hawaiians had an aristocratic society with a distinct class of nobility, the ali'i, and a distinct class of commoners, the maka'ainana. And these two classes didn't interact, or certainly didn't interbreed with each other. It was really almost as though there was a separate caste of rulers and the ruled.
Mythically, Hawaiian chiefs and commoners all belong on one genealogy, and everybody in the entire pre-contact society is related. Still, the commoners really could not trace their genealogies back to the gods or to the chiefs. This principle of genealogical rank, of chiefs ranking higher than commoners because of genealogical seniority, that's common to all of the Polynesian chiefdoms.
The spiritual leaders behind the ali'i were kahuna. Today they are called priests. But they had come with ali'i or separately from different places. They began to supervise the customs of the locals. It's clear that many ancient ways changed or went underground. Basically, all islands' politics now depended on how the kahuna and the chiefs got along. Of course, there were still the older local lineages, and they all needed to work together. When the first Westerners arrived, they found a society where many cults existed, and they all had their ways of worship. The priests of the war cults had to cooperate with the priests of agriculture, of healthcare, fishing, and crafts, because together they needed to feed the people and preserve their skills. Prophets and seers were more classes of society, and the caste of slaves, the kalva.
Today we hear about kawa being slaves. They were not slaves. Their job was to exist until the time of sacrifice is needed, which is hard enough. But it is said that they were coupled to the gods.
We know that as the centuries passed, the chiefs became more powerful, they became hedged by more elaborate ritual precautions that separated them from the commoners.
The ali'i had various ranks by inheritance and also by appointment into their office. There were several classes of agents and managers around the ruling chiefs, mostly their relatives.
In the times of the chiefs, it was actually kapu, or taboo, for commoners to recite genealogies. This was another factor that kept the chiefs separate from the commoners because they knew their genealogies. They could trace them all the way back to the gods, but the commoners couldn't.
If you were maka'inana, you essentially didn't have a genealogy. And you might know some things about it, but it really wasn't your place to have a genealogy. A genealogy was important for those who had royal ancestry.
Many independent chiefdom formed over time, and genealogies became centerpieces of warfare. Every clan of ali'i wanted to control land and people. This was ali'i life philosophy.
Oral traditions describe two-way voyages through several centuries, but migration stopped around the 15th century, and it is not known why. Now the islands developed an inner social dynamic which involved everybody who lived here.
And even within families, there are competing versions of genealogies and competing versions of events. And that's because stories are told from generation to generation, but they're always changed a little bit. And certainly you have chiefly stories that are very different in kind from the commoner stories.
In Hawaiian, we say that our birthplace is birth sands. We say oni hanau. Ihia ko oni hanau. Oh, my birth sands are Kauai. Well, Kauai ku oni hanau. Kauai is my birth sands. Funny, I've traveled through many parts of Polynesia, and what struck me is that nowhere else in Polynesia do they ever speak of birth sands, but they do in the Marianas. In a language related to ours, that's part of the Austronesian family of languages, and you consider where the Marianas are. They're east of the Philippines and east of Taiwan, and over there, they say their birthplace, their birth sands are the Unai Fanyagu, which is cognate with Hawaiian One Hanau.
Hawaiians have a lot of history and depth in understanding spirituality.
I luna o ka pu'u o tutui pukala, e hanau ka pule o ke akua, e ho mai ho o pono pono lo ka hihe, nā mele, nā ohana ho ke ia la wahi pana. E aloha no nā tupuna o kukui pukala. E ho mai la ke ahe, e ho mai la ke ahe, nā tupuna ho mauilo ala. E ho mai la ke ahe. E hanau nā mele ho ka lokahi, nā mele ho ka maluhia, nā mele ho ke aloha, nā mele o nā mo'otu au hau o mauilo ala.
E ala tapu tapu e o kalani e. E ala tapu tapu e o kalani e. E ala tapu tapu e o te atula e aloha e.
That society had elements that are now often called magical or occult. What it did not have was gods in a Western sense. Akua were known instead.
In our genealogy, we talk about Akua, we're talking about ancestors. Now, when we translate the word Akua, we go to God. In the Christian religion, God is separate. And man is made in the image of God, but is not God. In our religion, we are God.
Westerners talk about the God within. It's not an unusual concept, except that nobody wanted to hear it from a native.
For Hawaiians, this spirit is a very here and now, physical world kind of concept.
Our tutus had to live and die by their environment. And so they became very religious in a lot of ways, in part because of that. But they also understood that they were in partnership with their surroundings, that if they asked of it, it would produce what they asked. Again, another universal law that seems to be new age in thought today, but let me tell you, it's old age.
They would see whatever the situation, it is something that was brought by God. You hear the things of the unseen world, or you have a fragrance that you're familiar with, and yet that flower is not near you. You have come so accustomed to know that and to be accepting of that is your walk of life.
We have this incredibly complicated religion with the 40,000 gods. We have male gods, we have female gods. We have teachings from, say, the goddess Hina of the moon about all the nights of the moon and when you plant and when you fish, what's happening with the tides, what happens with women's bodies. All of these things are lessons that are associated with a god. So when we think of 40,000 gods who are represented in the 40,000 stars of the sky, those are actually 40,000 lessons about how we live upon these small and fragile islands.
We could tell when there's going to be a tidal wave through the sky, through the stars. We could tell when the time is right through the moon. We could tell when the way the sun comes up, what kind of power is going to be for the day. We could tell when a certain time to go and get a certain type of fish when the rain comes.
You had to respect each other. You had respect for the land. You had showed respect to the ocean. And you also thanked Io, the supreme being known by the Hawaiian people.
The whole society was spiritual in the sense that they were aware of spirit and spirit forces and communicated with them.
They knew how to live here in harmony with nature, productively, taking care of their resources.
Hawaii has so much to offer, and people don't use it in a careful way.
The land was divided in districts in the shape of wedges called ahupua'a, but it is not clear when or where for the first time. They stretched from the top of the mountains to the ocean, and they had several smaller divisions. The heads of pigs used to mark land boundaries. That's why ahupua'a, ahu means altar or some raised structure, pua'a means pig. All the islands were separate then, and even neighbor villages could be different in their cults because of the different chiefs and kahuna clans.
There were the Ali'i clan, they were warring clans, and they fought, and they had wars, and that's what life was like at that time. And that the communities or the villages that lived in the certain ahupua'as were there to make sure that there were enough resources to provide provisions.
The old land tenures were feudal tenures. A feudal society has what's called a feud, F-E-U-D, which in English became a fief. Now, if you had a fief on the baron or the lord's estate, if you were serf, then what you owed him was a certain amount of rent. You also owed him military duty. That's a vassal. So a serf, when he went to war, was a vassal of the lord. And then he went back to farming, then he was a serf again. The difference between those land tenures in Scotland and England and what the Hawaiians had when they were discovered, let's say, in 1778 by Captain Cook, were feudal land tenures where they could live on the lord's land, let's call him a chief, and pay him a rent in kind of labor, or what we call the Owhyhee provenance tax. Because in the ancient days, the Hawaiian man did not only live under one chief all the time. He was constantly moving, and in each situation, he was owing the feudal lord the amount of Owhyhee provenance for every quarter of the year. They collected it.
Lower-ranking chiefs became land managers and controlled the common people. They needed to make sure that enough of them lived on the land just in case the ali'i needed a lot of people for building a heiau or to make war.
There was no distinct concept of ownership. Ali'i did not own the land. The land was constantly redistributed among the victorious ali'i, a process called kalai'aina, cutting up the land. And now they had to malama the land and the people, which means to care for them, to restore prosperity after destructions of warfare. The akua needed to be pleased again.
Now, the chiefs believed that they were the direct lineage to these gods, and so they were the ones with the most mana. The more mana you had, the more authority you had to rule.
Mana is life force. That's the best way for me to describe it overall. Rocks have mana. They're filled with their own life. And as their mana breaks apart, if you will, that mana is then turned into dirt. And the mana of that dirt is the power to grow things. It feeds trees that have mana. And the function of that tree is to provide us oxygen. You know, we know this scientifically. The Hawaiians knew this intuitively. And that's the term that they used for it, mana, that applied to inanimate objects as well as animate.
Mana is not designated for only special ones, for mana is alive in everything. Sharing our talents, our kuleana, is mana. The way of giving and receiving increases mana.
It is another one of those universal truths that is called by something else somewhere. But the principle of it is the same the world over.
The Hawaiians had a whole range of words depending on the type of energy that you were talking about. They also had forms of energy that had to do with movement, with animation, with electrical energy or lightning. Even for spiritual energy, there were a number of different words, but the most prominent word for that was ha. And ha is a word that means breath, life, spirit. And it had a very spiritual connotation, spiritual in the sense of being invisible and yet present.
The nose lute is an instrument of sincerity and purity. We use our nostril because the Hawaiians believed that the breath is considered the essence, and our essence shared through our mouth is tainted because of our words. The lies that we speak, the harsh things that we say with our words, that taints our breath. But with your nostril, can't say any words, so the air from the nose, the ha, is considered pure.
Nowadays, the word kahuna is connected with that kind of knowledge or practice. In the ancient days, all people were familiar with concepts of natural forces, of power and energy and spirit. The term kahuna can also mean master or caretaker of knowledge of any kind.
The word kahu, it mainly means a keeper, someone who keeps and takes care of something. The word na means a very, very, very important place. The kahuna is just a keeper of a certain part of this place. That's all it is. The way people used to believe it, they thought it was a witch doctor. But it's not. It's just a person, a very important person, chosen to take care of a very important place in life.
There were kahuna canoe builders, there were kahuna fishermen, there were kahuna carpenters, there were kahuna stoneworkers, there were kahuna this and that. The word means expert, essentially. Then there were the priestly kahunas. They were the kahuna pule, which means a prayer master.
There were prayers that would call on the rain, call on the fertility of the land, would ask that it be in sync with you to produce.
In Hawaiian, prayers are natural. Praying is natural. If you were not praying, you were ill. You had no sense of spirit.
It's asking of your world, the extension of your world to cooperate. That's the thought behind the pule of old.
The forms of worship of the Ali'i were different from that of the Maka'inana. The Maka'inana prayed often to the same gods, but in a much more informal way. Very typically, a householder would have a gourd, a special gourd, like calabash covered bowl, in which he would have some special items like a piece of fish or a piece of a special type of root or something like that in it. And this would represent Lono, the god of agriculture and abundance and good fortune. And so he would, every morning, would uncover that, take each piece and say a prayer for the abundance and goodness and good fortune of the day.
We know that fishermen made offerings on the beaches. They had their own deities that they prayed to.
What we call the Ko'a shrine of the woman of Niihau sat on a little table facing the Southern Ocean. This particular stone is just a woman sitting like this, and one breast is what we call mutumutu. It's cut off, and she's sitting with her legs under her and looking towards the sea. Now, my grandmother was from Puna, and every day we had to go and pick manalo flowers for her to make the leis to put around the stone. That Ko'a shrine will take you back then to where she was born in Puna, where the Hawaiians used to take the oldest child of the oldest daughter and put it into the earth. When it was born, she had to surrender this infant, and they would put it with a stone into the earth and let the baby melt down until there was nothing left, no bones. Then they would take it out and set it up as what's called the Ko'a shrine by the sea. And that would be the shrine they would go to and pray before they went fishing. And then when they come back from the ocean, they would take their first fish and offer it to that shrine. There's a whole history of this stone in our lives, because from time to time she would show herself in whatever means, whether it was a dream or sudden appearance, she would show up. And this is how my father would know where to go when he was on the ocean, where he would find fish, because she would come and he would recognize her. Now that's the old Puna religion, which is different from all the other religions that came from elsewhere.
We didn't have a fixed religion as the Ali'i had a state religion. Not everybody went to that church.
Scholars have written about the sacrificial cult of Ku as if there was only one Hawaiian religion and that was it. But that's really a false picture of indigenous ritual practices and indigenous beliefs.
Most of our spiritual had to do with our aumakuas. And aumakua is kind of misnomer. Today we think of it as being a totem. A shark, a turtle, a mo'o. In reality, I have an essence, I'm alive. And the ideas that I'm talking about are not really from my father, they're from my grandfather. So there is an au, a light that is subsiding and then rising again.
One type of aumakua was, by some Hawaiians, considered a guardian type of spirit who would protect, give warnings, they would give help. And this aumakua usually took the form of an animal, but for some families it might take the form of a plant. Aumakua could also relate to the ancestors. You have within it the word that actually, as we take the roots, au can mean self or I, and makua is a parent. Now you got to understand, ancestral spirits for the Hawaiians were not spirits that existed in the far past. When we talk about the ancestors, they exist now, and they're here, and they can be communicated with and called upon for help and guidance.
I think most of us have a tendency to only look at humankind as my family. But as Hawaiian traditionalists, we understand that we are the youngest. And everything that was created before us are our elders, are our ancestors. Now, is that something that only as Hawaiians we get to experience and get to have? Is that something that the people throughout our world can have as well? I think so, because I've met many people who feel the same way.
I believe in nature. I believe in love. I believe in resource management. I believe in respect. Why? Because everything is alive. Everything is alive. The winds, the rocks, the ocean. And we gotta listen. Not only to the news, not only to the TV, but we gotta listen to nature.
The most powerful chiefs of the most prominent lineages formed a council of chiefs around 800 years ago. Special rituals and signs were now used to make a difference between the chiefs themselves. For example, a practice similar to circumcision or the use of sacred cords woven from fibers. These cords had their own names and they represented the chiefs and were used in rituals and methods that were similar to divination. Like, if a cord falls from the pole where it was loosely tied to, this was a sign that said something about the rank of the chief that walked by.
How to have people agree that you were the highest lineage? A lot of intermarrying between the islands, Hawaii, Maui, Oahu, Kauai.
This is a very ancient, very indigenous Polynesian practice to tell stories and to tell versions of genealogies that make your own family the one that's special. The job of a chief's genealogist was to tell the best version of that person's genealogy. But on another occasion, the chief might ask that genealogist to trace his line or her line in a completely different way.
King Kalakaua, who was a historian himself, wrote that the ancient chief Haho of Maui lineage established a council to permanently degrade the native nobles who could not trace their genealogies to really prestigious ali'i lineages of Polynesia. In Tahiti, for example, the aha ali'i was a regular meeting within the sacred space of a marae in Hawaii called heiau, where only the purest bloodlines had a seat. At that time, all children that those chiefs had with lesser-ranking people were killed to keep the bloodlines pure. It is known that descendants of chiefs of Tahitian ancestry did return to Tahiti after their clans had settled in Hawaii. But if there was doubt of the pureness of their blood, they were in great danger.
Strict taboos were enforced to protect the position of the highest-ranking chiefs against lower chiefs.
Rank was more important than gender in determining the circumstances of your life. The very, very highest chiefs were of such high godly rank that it was said that they glowed, and if the commoners laid eyes on them, their eyes would be burned out.
Those Kauko ali'i who serve as land stewards or guardians of high chiefs, who serve as intermediary between those chiefs who are gods on the earth and the commoners who are not gods on the earth, they can run around any time of day or night. High chiefs cannot go out in the day for fear of their kapu from the shadow of their body, making the land kapu and you can't plant or walk there or etc.
Chiefs themselves were under tremendous restrictions. The chiefs had mana. Now, under the religious system of that time, mana was a very precious thing and a delicate thing. If the rituals weren't performed exactly under those priesthood systems, then this could diminish the mana, and that could cause a disharmony in the whole society.
John Papa'i'i is a very important person in Hawaiian history. He was a servant and an assistant to the highest level of ali'i. John Papa'i'i's writings are a combination of his personal experiences and other things which he learned about during his lifetime, particularly his earlier life, but also Hawaiian traditions and Hawaiian knowledge that predated his life. And as an example, he describes in detail different rituals, different activities which would take place as part of Hawaiian religion, as part of the practice of Hawaiian religion. What went on in a heiau, for example, so that you get more of a glimpse of what it was like perhaps for the average Hawaiian person, the maka'ainana.
If a disaster happens, it's the chief who's blamed, and on Hawaii Island, they generally kill the chief. Oahu, we're a little bit more friendly here. We just exiled the highest chief. But the highest chiefs had a lot of responsibility. They were trained from when they were very small, not to play, but to learn all of the ancient chants for ceremony, that you pray to the gods. How do you intermingle with the gods? How do you get the gods' power to come and make the land fertile?
Because of its purity, I was told of the nose flute that it was used to open ceremonies. The calmness and the serenity of the nose flute would set the tone to be very calm.
The whole issue of authenticity and what is the real Hawaiian culture, or what was the real Hawaiian culture, has always been a hot topic in Hawaii.
A person may say, I know this place and its name was Kalaoa. And a person who was also born and raised and for generations will say, no, 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 I'm from that place and it's pronounced Kalaua. Who's to say who's right? Because each family will stand up and say, no, this is what's right, because this is what I've known and what my family has known for generations. So why is it in our world that we have to have either or? As long as we both understand that we're talking about the same place, what's the problem?
And so you have today sometimes people mocking others because the pronunciation of a particular word is dramatically different from what the norm is per se.
I think it's always interesting to realize that that which has been documented is a person's life experience of what they knew life was like.
The fact is that people of different places told different stories.
In reality, the ali'i and kahuna lived rather simple lives in grass houses with the same resources like the commoners, but they had their taboos that all together formed a so-called kapu system. Kapu is the Hawaiian word for taboo, or more modern, avoidance rule.
The kapu system was created to protect the flow of mana.
I think it just was an extension of an original system that was already in place. But now you have individuals who will say, this needs to be taken care of, and this is the portion that will go to this ali'i, these deity.
Kapu are taboos, but basically just rules, gave everyone in society their position once it was made clear who the noblest lineages were. The religious myths of the ali'i and the kahuna were the reasons for these rules. Some kapu demanded that people had to throw themselves to the ground in front of the ali'i when they only saw their clothes, their spittoons, or their food.
If a full brother married a full sister, then they held what is called ni'aupio rank. And with ni'aupio rank, they also had the right to be received with a kapu, which was called the kapu moi, which is the prostration taboo.
Under some kapu, people were killed if only their shadow fell on the house of the chief. You drop something, step on the wrong spot, you're dead.
When John Papa'i'i is writing, you can tell that he looked back with respect towards the things that had happened. He did not have contempt or hatred for traditional culture. He respected it. But he also would comment on it and say, these kapu, these restrictions, these things that people had to live with were very difficult, were scary, were threatening.
Let's say if you were ali'i, you married your first cousin, your second cousin, didn't matter. Or a half-brother marrying a half-sister. Then that rank was called naha, meaning split rank. Then you held the right to be received by what was called the kapu noho, which was the sitting taboo.
Even if there was hearsay of breaking a kapu, a person could be killed. This happened to the auntie of Opukaha'ia. According to his memoirs, she was thrown off a cliff right in front of his eyes. He wanted to jump after her and kill himself, but the same people who killed his aunt saved him. Killing others wasn't anything personal, it was a duty. Sound familiar?
One was always in danger of committing an unintended act which could lead to one's death.
Punishment for breaking kapu, intentionally or not, was brutal. And we won't go into details here. Just about anything that hurts and kills was done to people. In some eras, in some places, whole families could be destroyed, even for hearsay of taboo breaking. Burning sites and places of torture were found in the 18th and 19th century. And Hawaiians themselves reported that they knew from their family's past, especially when confessions became popular under the Christian law.
Many generations before Kamehameha, the network of ali'i relations had become dense and complicated, and so had warfare. It became a custom for chiefs to give their children into feeding adoption to chiefs of other clans, and this was meant to create close relationships. The island lineages intermingled, of course, but what was meant to bring peace led to more rivalries. The young ali'i now had claims of rulership in several clans, and they were obligated to each of them. Now the ali'i often fought their own friends and family members whom they would later ask for help in their own battles.
Chiefs and kahuna ordered the commoners to build heiau, which are today called temples, places of meeting, of worship, of ceremony. And they were also built to impress other ali'i.
This vahipana, this sacred site, this area, Kukuipuka, is a pu'uhonua, a place of healing, a place of surrender, a place of refuge that invites one to recognize the mana of the self. Many of long ago came here to make pono, to make proper and good and righteous relationships with all.
In the ancient days, every family had places where people would go to speak to the akua. Sometimes these were just special spots in the landscape where one would go and meditate and give thanks.
As time went by, many who think of Hawaiian sites and heiau often think of a darker side.
Protocols were different depending on the heiau that you were going into. The protocols for the temples dedicated to Lono are not as strict as those that are dedicated to Ku.
Perhaps the ancestors knew that someone had to give blood in order to have a show for political power. Someone has to do that. And today, we're willing to sacrifice thousands upon thousands every year, especially if they're not our own, but even if they are our own.
At the dedication of a war heiau, you have a human sacrifice that is placed up on the lele. The protocols are strict. In some cases, the people are made to sit and not move. And if they move, they'd be executed right on the spot.
If you didn't find any wrongdoers, then you had to use a substitute. Sometimes pig is a substitute. A shark is a substitute. A large ulua fish, the big ones like 6 feet long.
As a matter of fact, if you were a chief who won a battle, you were supposed to sacrifice your defeated rival on the heiau. So this business of human sacrifice had a lot to do with chiefly power politics and chiefly warfare at the very highest levels.
Strict regulations also separated men and women in their daily life. It had not been that way in the pre-ali'i society. At least, that's what ancient stories tells us. Women were also separated from men in their worship, and perhaps this was especially strict in the higher ranks. On the other hand, women could be kahuna who held the kapu in place.
Hawaiian chiefly women had their own lands, had their own retainers, their own servants. They were waited on, they were decision makers, they had generals who were at their command.
It was a taboo of all taboos that men and women could not eat together. Certain foods like, for example, bananas, coconut, breadfruit, pigs, and types of fish were dedicated to male akua in the ali'i days.
Certain of these foods were set aside for males to eat and not females.
The eating was the communion with those gods. You eat of the god. The ai, you're eating, also has a double meaning. Ai means to control. So then you control the essence and the knowledge and the power that that god has.
Women were not supposed to eat pork, but they could eat cooked dog, so that's cool. So they ate cooked dog.
It wasn't something like, oh, I can't eat pig, or I can't eat banana today. It was just a part of their everyday life, and it was just a given.
The Hawaiians had small, kind dogs. Their teeth were used for decoration and warrior outfits.
The kapu system, it comes from a place of understanding that which is sacred. The mountainside, the sea below, the heavens above, the earth beneath, all the things that dwell within it, upon it, and above it. These are sacred things. And that we as the children of God, if you will, are here to tend to those sacred things as well as ourselves. And so the kapu system is that system that was put into place to take care of those sacred things.
Akua is usually translated into English as God. Most Westerners automatically make an association with the gods of Greeks in Rome or Scandinavia. Akua doesn't really mean God in that sense at all. There are so many variations on the meaning of that. So it seems to be the spirit or the essence of something that had a lot of influence, had a lot of power of some kind that affected people, like the forces of nature that were personified.
Which is maybe a more in-depth understanding of how life interrelates.
We know that there were gods and goddesses associated with particular tasks.
Nala'au means a place where plants are growing. Lapa'au, a place where the minerals are. That's what it means. Mahi'ai is when you take all that together and you rake it and you mix it up and you produce things out of that. That's the mahi'ai, a farmer. E mai ka ho'o ka ingia oe. Ho.
The Mahi'ai would share his harvest. The Levi'ai would share his catch for the day. And the key word is share. There was really no concept for buy, own, sell, trade.
If men and women did different things, then men would worship to the deities of their particular task activities, and women, for example, who made the tapa cloth for garments, would worship the deities of tapa beating and tapa decoration.
Men had to cook for themselves and for their wives, of course, separate dishes. They had to exactly know the taboos, otherwise they and their wives could be killed. Or when they broke a taboo, like in times of famine, they had to be very careful doing that, and there were.
Missionaries came and they said, how oppressed are Hawaiian women? Men and women can't eat together. How oppressed are Hawaiian women? Well, as a Hawaiian woman, I can tell you, I don't care if I never eat with a man. I can think of many better things to do with men than eat with them. And if men are going to do all the cooking, I'm really happy to see that happen.
The Akua, Ku, Lono, Kani, and Kanaloa were the main spiritual entities in the islands in the late 18th century, and each of them had their own priesthood.
The Wai'olo Okani, or the healing rains, or the healing waters. Te hea ka Wai'olo Okani, from the Punawai, from the Kahawai, from the Owhyhee, all of these different sources of water are kani.
Chiefs were called Akua because of their mana. It was because they had the power of life and death over the people.
Other Akua like Pele, Hina, or Laka, Hi'iaka, Haumea, and Kapo also had kahuna who took care of their cults. Old traditions. Who knows where they came from?
So when you're looking at the molten lava, you're looking at Pele, who had so much power, according to the legends, that she had the ability to also take human form and lots of other forms. And she's often in some of the chants called the foreign goddess, because there were also volcano gods here before she arrived.
Hawaii's staple plants came with the immigrants and were all related to their deities. Taro, sugarcane, and bamboo belong to Akua Kani. The sweet potato, the gourd, and the hog are identified with Lono, and the coconut and breadfruit with Ku, the banana with Kanaloa. Hawaiians got to be known as the taro people because of our most important ancestral staple plant. The smallest thing could be Akua, but everything in life was part of one overall great Akua. All four main Akua had many versions of names with many meanings.
Ku'ula is called, if you read some of the text, the god of the fishermen. Ku'ula was Ku in his aspect of a spirit related to fishing. And so each one of the gods had these different aspects for the various areas that they were supposed to have influence in.
There was no war in the harvest and the planting season, especially on the Big Island, with its large dry areas and strong cults around Lono, the Akua of agriculture.
The word Lono, as a word, has to do with news or spreading information or communication. And esoterically, in my Hawaiian family, this was a term that was used for the approximation of what we would call the conscious mind.
What is Lono? This is Lono right here. The fontanel of the head is Lono. That's the reasoning part of the Lolo, the brain. So Lono is the active thoughts of the Lolo, which is the brain without thoughts. If you are thoughtful, you are Lono.
Here's this word out here, but it also relates someplace within the body structure, whether it's within this immediate body structure or above, you know, your whole etheric being, if you will. It's quite interesting, quite fascinating that this kind of understanding and knowledge was a practice of the people of these islands.
A navigator named Lono, or a chief named Lono, one who moves from place to place, came and then left. The stories is endless all over the Pacific. Those who are schooled, who could navigate, left, and they will return. There are several orders of Lono priests, several disciplines and study, several different universities. We call them heiaus.
Ku is a word, as a word in Hawaiian, has to do with standing, firmness, and foundation. And in my family, it was also used as a term to represent a very rough approximation of what we would call subconscious, but more specifically, the actual ability we have for memory.
Spiritual knowledge was different among the diverse family clans of all ranks. That's why today, not all Hawaiians have the same understanding of old Hawaiian lore.
In my family, Kane represented difficult translation, but we'd have to call it spirit. And so the specific ability we have for inspiration and energy.
Any information I don't have, not from my family, is a secret to me.
Now within the Ahupua'a, there are many different kuleana, or role or responsibility is probably the closest translation for what kuleana means. But there are many, like I said, different types of kuleana that were played within the Ahupua'a to create harmony.
If your father's a warrior, pretty much you're gonna be a warrior. Your grandfather was a warrior. Dancer, if your father was a dancer or fisherman, your line would be a fisherman or a dancer.
Now, if you're born into a certain kuleana or role, you would carry through that kuleana for the rest of your life. You would teach your child that kuleana.
The kupuna that might be in place were there to observe and to guide, to say, you better look over here, pay attention. Did you see this? Did you recognize this? To cause us to ponder on our actions so that we become that next generation who's going to be in turn to be those to guide and to inspire and to demonstrate the importance of that connection to the unseen world.
I think each family held dear those traditions that they felt was sacred to them. The knowledge of their land, sacred to them.
What makes a place sacred is knowing that it is part of earth. For all of earth is sacred.
Planting would differ because of location, where you are, phase of the moon, and what conditions that phase brought to your location. The ocean differs, the rain patterns differ, so basic practices had to differ.
And they became masters at what they did, whether it be a kahuna la'o practicing medicine, whether it be a fisherman, whether it be a kumuhula teaching hula, you were a master.
Wetland taro is very, very difficult. The water flows from each patch, one to the other, through gravity. You have to understand the lay of the land. You have to understand how water flows.
We want to know how my ancestors grew fish so abundantly in these ponds. We want to know the factors that led to that. We're trying to grow fish, but we don't have the nutrient waters to promote the seaweed blooms. None of the ahupua'as are working. What we need to do is adapt and evolve.
You worked hard and you played hard. You loved hard, and when it was time to die, you lived a full life. They were years ahead in understanding the powers that were in place. You hear the term malamaka'ina, which means to care for the land. Well, that's because if you did, then the land cared for you.
Every fish pond get a fresh water source. That's the life. That's the life of a fish pond. My ancestors knew that we live on an island. Limited water, limited land, limited resources. With this continental mentality, people think everything is unlimited. So they splurge, they waste, they abuse.
Your great-great-great-grandkids will look back and look at you as being their kupuna and say, wow.
All we do will come back down the line. What kind of world are we leaving behind? After we're long gone, our hands hold.
And you could relate to the stars, to the ocean, to the birds, to the fish. You know, it was paradise, basically.
Anybody, commoner, chief, everybody could go fish on the incoming and outgoing lanes of a fish trap. And these are scattered all over throughout the islands.
They would see signs in a child, maybe at birth or during the course of that child's life, to deem the child worthy of the knowledge.
So my grandmother and all my other grandmothers all sat down in a paina and they watch all us little ones running back and forth. Then they go, whee! They all point out like this. They look for the one that is more curiosity in other words, saying kolohe, and that's the one they're going to teach.
We can still be Hawaiian and be as advanced as anybody in the world. Huge misconception of being Hawaiian means going back to the loincloths, going back to the grass shacks.
The inter-island war drums continued to beat without pause, wrote the Hawaiian historian Samuel Kamakau about the period of time before European contact. When the British Captain James Cook arrived in Hawaii in 1778, the high chiefs of Big Island and Maui were fighting, and the other islands were involved as well.
In the late 18th century, Hawaii was divided in 4 large territories, which were ruled by paramount chiefs.
The land was divided such that one lord at the top held all the rights to the property, so we called him the Ali'inui or the Ali'imo'i. Below him was what we called then the district chiefs. So if I take the island of Hawaii, when Kamehameha was not yet king, was divided into 6 moku. So each moku had ali'aimoku who were in charge of those districts. Below them were the next group, titled chiefs, high-ranking, called the ali'aifua'a. And below the ali'aifua'a, there were no more land-owning titled chiefs, although there was the ali'i class.
But ali'i themselves had to move too, because when they lost their standing somewhere, they had to find themselves a new retinue. Hawaiians of old had no writing, but they had chants. Mostly the chants were about ali'i, but in the ancient days, they had been about anything in life.
Ulu kaneme kanalo Ulu ohi alau koa meka ye A e mai anoho I koukua. A lot of the old Hawaiian prayers has to do with life. Life to the chiefs. Yola ke ali'i.
Some ruled very skillfully, and others could be arbitrary and difficult and cruel. And all of that existed in Hawaiian culture in traditional times, just as we see that in any political situation in the world that we live in today. It was not proper for them to simply take from these people. They had to guide, they had to care for. So they had a very big responsibility. By the same token, the ali'i were still dependent upon the maka'ainana to provide for them.
Aya tavaila he vaiola hiola nui. Last part of the chant says, Aya tavaila he vaiola hiola nui. Here are the waters of life. They're all running right here.
The taxes were taken during the Makahiki period, the last quarter of taxation. But for the rest of the year, they were collecting quarterly Owhyhee provender,
which means a quantity of produce, livestock, cloth, and everyday life objects in exchange for the permission to live on the land that the ali'i controlled.
If you had a big fat pig, that was supposed to go to the chiefs. That was the way things worked because the chiefs got the biggest and the best of stuff.
The chiefs then, who were the lowest on, let's say, the land-owning group, paid a third of the provender they received from all the ili'aina during each quarter up to the next level of power, let's say, of ownership. Then these chiefs up here took from that third another third that they handed up.
Commoners had no personal possessions. From loincloths to children, chiefs could ask for whatever they liked. In the ancient days, though, people had believed that the personal mana of the owner of any object was connected to that object. That's why everyone respected the things that belonged to others. You also would not ask about other people's business for that reason. To be ni'ele, which means nosy, or too curious, was not a good thing.
The Ilamuku in ancient Hawaiian times was the marshal, the executioner. That's what he was, the executioner. If you did something wrong during these ceremonies, say when the ali'i nui comes in and you didn't prostrate properly, and that was the Ilamuku's job to execute you right there.
Kuali'i, who was the chief of Oahu, was said to have lived over 170 years and kept alive because he was a pious chief. There's no sacrifices during his time whatsoever of human beings.
Hawaii did not remain really untouched after the main migration had stopped. There are many stories about arrivals of foreigners in the ancient past.
The place they came from was over the horizon that was called Kahiki. Didn't necessarily mean Tahiti. Could be any place, could be outer space, as well as another island or someplace else over the horizon, but no matter who they were, if they came from somewhere else, they were called a haole.
Kupuna haole mai kahiki, foreign ancestor from a place far away, were sometimes described as having fair skin and light eyes.
In the 20th century, haole came to mean Western, white person.
I'm from Hawaii, but I carry all the bloods of the land. I carry the blood of the Pacific as well as the blood of Europe. And it does not matter the quantity. It just simply matters that we recognize each one as life and respect and honor each one as life.
Chief Kuali'i was taken by currents and winds to a foreign land during his travels, perhaps Mexico, sometime in the 16th century. And there is an interesting chant about his adventures where he talks about the strange language spoken in Kahiki, and that men were like gods there. Kind of interesting for an ali'i to say. Perhaps one of the most famous voyagers was a very early chief by the name of Paumakua Alono Ho'oneva. It was said of him that he had circumnavigated the world because his travels were so extensive. He really seems to have traveled outside of Polynesia. Even more interesting, he returned with at least 2 Kanaka Ke'oke'o, white people, and these haole were known to be kahuna. All this is told in our ancient records. So there was influence from outside way before James Cook arrived.
The captain came from Yorkshire, England, and was already a famous navigator and explorer when he reached the islands early in 1778. He was on his way to the northwest coast of America, coming from Tahiti. He named the islands in honor of one of his sponsors, John Montague, Earl of Sandwich. The Earl had personally known a Pacific Islander, young Owhyhee of Hawaii, deeply impressed the society of London when he was introduced by Cook in 1774 after his second voyage. Owhyhee became famous in the upper class who had no agenda of trying to convert him. For example, he demonstrated cooking in a Polynesian earth oven in the middle of London. Captain Cook brought Owhyhee back to Hawaii on his last voyage. Both hoped that gifts and knowledge would raise the status of the islander. Then Cook sailed north and discovered Hawaii. Owhyhee never received the recognition he hoped for. He was not of the noblest blood. He actually died early. When Cook set out for his last voyage, the revolution in the New World came to an end. On the 4th of July, 1776, the Declaration of Independence made clear the intent of cutting loose the 13 new colonies on the North American continent from Great Britain and its legislature under King George III. The fate of Captain Cook is told in many versions. The sources are journals and native stories. He was actually highly respected all over the Pacific, wherever he went. But only in Hawaii, he was referred to as Lono, a manifestation of an ancient Hawaii island chief, who is also known as the legendary Lono Ika Makahiki. It was harvest season when Cook arrived at the Big Island, Makahiki, a sacred time of peace, of harvest and festivities.
At the end of the Makahiki, there was a ritual that symbolized the victory of the chiefs who were allied with Ku. The ruling chief and the image of Ku and the priests of Ku would come to shore and would have a mock battle with the priests of Lono. And in this mock battle, the priests of Lono would be defeated, and all the images of Lono would be wrapped again in sacred tapa cloth and put away until the next year's Makahiki.
If I left my island home for a better future, what would that mean?
There are many interesting descriptions of how Cook played all the roles that the kahuna of the Lono order gave him in the ceremonies and rituals. The Ku priests were not that much interested, but they made sure that their ali'i received proper honors by the British as well.
Cook and his crew interacted peacefully with the people. The kahuna were friendly, showed them around. The British got wood, water, and provisions. Also very precious feather capes, mats, fishing gear, and the chiefs and the kahuna received nails, daggers, and other Western things.
His two ships left in peace, but they had to come back soon to repair a broken mast. Now Cook entered a different atmosphere, and his fate became tied into the tense relations between ali'i clans of Ka'avaloa and their Ku kahuna and the Lono kahuna of Kealakekua, two settlements on the opposite sides of Kealakekua Bay. Several Hawaiians of various ranks, Captain Cook, as well as some crew members, died in a skirmish in February 1779 due to the clash of cultures that finally did happen, fatally connected to old rivalries between chiefly and kahuna clans. Oh yes, What happened to Cook's bones? To answer this would fill another film, because to this day, people are fighting over the question whether Cook was treated as a dead beloved chief or as a dead enemy. In both cases, according to Hawaiian lore, he may have been considered a kua, but Westerners would translate this as God. And here we are, back in the controversy.
Owhyhee was born around 1792 in the province of Ka'u, near Punaluu on the island of Hawaii. Due to warfare, his family ended up seeking shelter and safety in a time of extreme violence and prosecution. His family was killed by warriors, and when he tried to carry his baby brother into safety, a spear pierced his baby brother through the back.
And what's peculiar is that the warrior who is responsible for their deaths decides to take him home, takes him to his home and raises him.
After all, enemies in the battles were other Hawaiians.
As a part Hawaiian myself, growing up here in Hawaii, and then later learning about Henry Owhyhee, Henry is a real inspiration to my life.
As far as I'm concerned, he was one of the catalysts that got the missionaries over here.
As a native of New England, I grew up learning about Owhyhee. As a very small child, I remember sitting on the floor in front of the church and hearing stories about his life and his work.
While Owhyhee was growing up, the ambitions of Chief Kamehameha determined life circumstances.
Kings not being settled or happy with ruling one island, they wanted to rule another island, and other kings fought for the same.
When the old mo'i dies, the old king dies, all the lands come back in. The new mo'i has to show he is politically astute and he can give the lands out to those people who are loyal to him and who will not fight against it.
All islands had paramount chiefs. After the death of Hawaii's old ruler Kalani'opu'u in 1780, the young ali'i Kamehameha was given the custody of the war idol, Pukailimoku, the spirit that snatches islands. And mighty big island chiefs helped him in his rise to power. He soon reigned over his entire home island, but he wanted to rule all the islands.
So this idea of unifying the islands under one lineage, it wasn't a new idea. It was an old idea, and it was for mana. It wasn't for land. It's to show that you have the greatest amount of spiritual power. You are the akua on earth.
Chief Kahikili of Maui basically controlled all the other islands at some point. And after his death, Kamehameha tried to conquer Kahikili's lands as well.
It took a few years after Captain Cook's death until more Westerners came to the islands. Captain Cook already had traded iron for food and water. Later, traders bartered everything from clothes to beads for supplies and water, and some traded in arms.
If you look at, I think, history in a whole, when there is an advantage to be utilized, it seems that it's always taken, no matter who the ruler is.
Now, at the call of war, everybody is a warrior. Even the commoners, the farmers, the fishermen are warriors.
Fight, conquer, go back home, replenish the supplies, and conquer the usurpers, the ones that you already conquered, but you know, the natives get restless every now and then.
Warriors were responsible for teaching the commoners, the farmers, the fishermen, the hula dancers to use their implements that they used in everyday life for war. They weren't just big guys that knew how to fight. These guys are masters at hand-to-hand combat and being some of the most intelligent men in their time, knowing everything that there is to know about the botanicals, the herbs, the plants, knowing what can heal you, what can kill you, what's poisonous, what's not poisonous. These guys are very, very, very highly skilled and often did wars of intellect, not always physical all the time.
Kamehameha was born sometime in the 1750s and spent his childhood hidden from rivals. Perhaps that's why he got his most famous name, Kamehameha, meaning the very lonely one. At the court of Hawaii's high chief, Kalaniʻopuʻu, he was trained to be a fierce, fearless, and smart warrior. He got another name, Paia, a hard-shelled crab, which tells us something about his nature.
Within the warrior, there's a male perspective and a female perspective. If that warrior is too much on the male perspective, he'd be considered bloodthirsty, savage, killing everything in your sight. If that warrior is too much on the female side, then that warrior would be considered soft, weak, conniving, to be disrespected, probably get killed for that.
War is a game man plays when he loses his logic and his common sense, and he has no aloha. Hawaiian speaks of aloha as a hope, a thing to be practiced and to be wished for.
Oppression goes way back. I mean, I don't know of a culture that hasn't felt oppressed or have been oppressed, because the elements for oppression is somebody in power and somebody not in power. You know, I'm making guesses, but the early Hawaiians who left Polynesia, I think they may have felt oppressed, and that's why they left. For the same reasons the Europeans who left Europe and came to the United States, you know, they probably felt oppressed.
Kamehameha's famous law of the splintered paddle was an amnesty decree for bystanders in warfare and avoided more bloodshed. This was in an era when even the pu'uhonua, places of refuge, were not respected anymore, and refugees were killed. The Hawaiian historian Samuel Kama'akau wrote about that era. The lower class dwindled and the upper grew more and more wicked.
Westerners were business partners, advisors, and friends to Kamehameha from the late 18th century on. They helped him build foreign-style ships, and the foreign weapons made the battles shorter. Hawaiians themselves knew very destructive ways of man-to-man combat.
So I made it, and I named it. I named it Ke'aomoku. Why? Because that's my name, Ke'aomoku. And that's how I live on. When I pass this to my son passes to his son, and hopefully in 500 years, they'll be ringing my name still yet, Ke'aomoku. Which means I'm still alive.
Kamehameha actually wasn't that high-ranking a chief. He was just politically and militarily very, very smart. Because by marrying women who were of this exalted, semi-divine rank, he was able to produce children who ranked higher than himself.
2 Englishmen ended up living in Kamehameha's court. One of them was John Young, who was left behind by his captain who thought he had deserted. The other was Isaac Davis, the only survivor of a skirmish between Hawaiians and British. Young and Davis were little above the ranks of simple sailors, but yet they became Kamehameha's closest friends and trusted advisors. They assisted in his conquests and his new business, trade.
Young and Davis were given high-ranking wives and land, like many Western foreigners who got employed by high chiefs.
And so that's the first element of empowerment, knowing where you stand amongst others. As Hawaiians, we need to know the pecking order, so we know how to negotiate what we want from the world.
John Young's land actually included a prestigious heiau. This was as early as in the 1780s.
The British Captain George Vancouver, who was a former crew member of Captain Cook, returned to the islands, and he also became one of Kamehameha's close advisors. Many chiefs respected Vancouver's views. He wanted to help end the warfare. They discussed the cession of Hawaii to Great Britain already in 1793, but King George III only promised to aid Hawaii in case of need and refused to make Hawaii part of his empire. Kamehameha flew Great Britain's flag in Hawaii to impress foreigners because European and Asian nations had already their eye on this pearl in the middle of the Pacific. Finally, Kamehameha turned Hawaii into a kingdom after British model, and later the design of the flag was changed.
During the era of Kamehameha's conquest, the French Revolution broke out in 1789. Among the reasons were the spendthrift of the European aristocracy. The people had to pay enormous taxes to support the lifestyle of the nobles. The new ideas of spiritual enlightenment and democracy became popular. General Napoleon Bonaparte first supported the revolution, but then he strove for control over Europe. Ultimately, he failed.
Captain Vancouver, of course, informed Kamehameha about the situation in Europe. He brought sheep, goats, and cattle to help replenish the island's resources after the wars. Vancouver had always refused to trade arms.
When Kamehameha unified the islands militarily, his line and his god, Ku Ka'ilimoku, the war god, the god who demanded sacrifice, they won. And so the religion of Ku became known to foreigners who came along later as the Hawaiian religion.
On Kauai, the heiau that was described in Cook's journals was dedicated to Kanaloa, a big heiau. And we do know that when Kauai capitulated to Kamehameha, they were required to take down their heiau and to rededicate them to the gods that Kamehameha worshipped.
Kamehameha's centralized government introduced new rules on all the islands based on the customs of his home island, Hawaii. The kapu system was once more intensified, and now the term the Hawaiians began to be heard.
Did the Hawaiians call themselves Hawaiians when they were found? When Captain Cook arrived, let's say in 1778, did they come up and tell you they were Hawaiians? No, they didn't. Hawaii was not at that time the supreme Owhyhee, we call it, government. The Owhyhee is the nation, government. So they didn't use Kanaka Hawaii to identify themselves. They had a different way of showing their allegiance to people in power or lands where they were born in their political system and association for, who knows, hundreds, thousands of years. As they developed their own system, they moved on a what we might call tribal association or grouping. They kept the word ohana, for example, which is from Austronesian, Polynesian, kohanga, which means nest. But that's where the word ohana comes from, extended family. On the other hand, when they say they're keiki o ka'aina, then to determine how they're thinking over there, you have to go back to the Samoan language, which uses the word ainga, not to mean land or dirt, not at all. It means people on a tract of land.
The priestly order of Lono that had welcomed Cook and other religious orders almost disappeared out of the records when Kamehameha came to rule.
Certain kahuna trained the population in ritual behavior because everybody had to know exactly what to do during ceremonies. Parents taught their children all the taboos they knew, wrote John Papa'i'i, and this was to give them a greater chance of survival.
It is a situation which was probably not uniformly bad or terrible or difficult, nor uniformly good and wonderful. All of the individuals involved were going to have different outlooks. All of the individuals involved were going to react differently. And so I don't think we can make a blanket statement about all good or all bad.
If the society that existed so long ago was a society that is based in a culture of aloha, how do these people that seemingly were so based in harmony, how can they so react to those who are so aggressive or seem to be reported as so aggressive? And it comes to my mind to think that their love of the Creator is so full and so great that they would perceive that whomever comes into their midst is guided here from that same Creator.
You know, some of the things that we still practice today, others have forgotten, have pushed off to the side and deemed it unimportant.
Gathering food was one of our biggest things that we had to learn about. We have half of the family goes in a mountain, and the other half goes out on the ocean. Then we come back together maybe midday and put all these things together. And, you know, we just don't go up in a mountain. There was a sign to tell you that when to go up in a mountain, and there was a sign to tell you when you go out in the ocean.
When folks ask me, well, what will the Hawaiian culture be 20 years from now, 50 years from now? I say, well, it'll be what it needs to be to survive, to feel like it's still genuine. But it will leave a lot behind. Why? Because culture changes, people change. But my hope is that they don't leave the most important things behind. You know, like the concept of aloha, lokahi, unity, the language, the dance, the music. Those are important elements for them to keep on that boat as we voyage into the next century.
As a foster child of his uncle, young Opuka'a was trained to become a priest.
Any such training would have involved tremendous dedication and study. Well, let's say a kahuna of Lono, for example, would have to excel in prayer. So he would have to know the chants related to the order of Lono. They were involved with the planting and harvesting and the agricultural aspects, the herbalism, almost like the technical side of the society.
Nowadays, many people are fascinated by the word kahuna, and some people carry the title often undeserved or with a very naive or romantic understanding of the word.
There was a reason why that a lot of the practices died with our tutus. Some are trying to revive and go back to the old way, but my caution in that is that you don't know what you're doing, basically. And so, why fool with it?
Some of the Hawaiian wooden sculptures represent female images, distinctly female images, and they're usually very beautifully done, highly polished objects with real human hair. Very often that hair is a reddish color called ehu, which is considered very propitious or special. Many of those images also have cavities in them, that is, holes carved into their back or other places, sometimes the head, where mana-laden objects could be placed. Mana-laden objects would be objects of the human body. It could be any sort of parts that come from a human body, and they, serving as containers for that, could be used for sorcery.
My father's way was, he don't want you to believe in mu, he don't want you to believe in ku, he don't want you to believe in all the different gods and goddesses. And the reason of that was because my father became a minister. And also My grandmother, she became a minister also.
At about 15 years old and an adult in his society, young Opuka'a did not fancy the outlook of being a kahuna in a time when foreigners were around and broke kapu.
He was so disillusioned with the Hawaiian culture, he only had one thought, and that was to get out of Hawaii.
He wished to explore the world.
On this island I found a way.
Hawaii lies on a direct route between North America and the Far East. And of course, the islands quickly became a favorite meeting place for ships. Already by the end of the 1700s, Kanaka traveled all over the world.
It was a time of feverish changes. When Opuka'a left the islands in 1807, new businesses developed. Carpenters, sailmakers, blacksmiths, bakeries, laundries, shops, and boarding houses, all run by Hawaiians or foreigners. As a result, gambling, alcoholism, prostitution, and unhygienic circumstances spread.
Many ali'i now ordered their people to grow the produce that the foreigners wanted and to raise new animals like cows and goats besides the traditional pigs, chickens and dogs.
Something that actually just blew me away when I started to look into early 19th century Hawaiian history was the sheer number of Western-style vessels that had been purchased and used by Hawaiian chiefs. Pretty much everything that we know about that class of vessels is something that's been almost put forward in an anecdote form, with Cleopatra's barge, or Ha'aheo o Hawaii, that wrecked in Hanalei Harbor in 1824. For that one vessel, they paid nearly $80,000. Liho Liho had purchased it for that much in sandalwood in that day's money. And the chiefs actually used these vessels to get involved in the maritime trade. They sailed their own vessels of Western design to Kamchatka, to the California coast, to Vanuatu, and all over the Pacific in reality.
As a leader in war, Kamehameha had no mercy. He was very determined, and he achieved his goal. His political ambition started about 1780, and about 30 years later, he was a ruler over all of Hawaii.
Only the island of Kauai was never conquered militarily, because Paramount Chief Ka'umuali'i ceded his chiefdom to Kamehameha, but he remained the ruler over Kauai. From now on, Hawaii was a kingdom, rulership handed on by inheritance and not by conquest. The only way that the ali'i could now keep up their clan's prestige was to become rich through trade. They tried to accumulate goods and soon money. Sandalwood trade was on the way to become a disastrous tool in the strife for mana.
When the young kahuna apprentice Opuka'a left Hawaii in 1807 aboard the Triumph under Captain Caleb Brintle, he was accompanied by Hopu, another young Hawaiian, who was the attendant to one of Kamehameha's sons, another passenger on top of the boat. The Triumph sailed to the northwest coast of America, where they picked up sealskins and furs. It's pretty much what other merchant ships did in those days. But before continuing on to China, the young ali'i had enough of traveling and was brought back to the islands. But Hopu and Opuka'a continued on with their voyage.
Opu and Opuka'a were given the names Thomas and Henry as members of the Triumph's crew. While on board, one of the men spoke to them about the basic principles of Christianity, but this may not have been the first time they've heard about this, as many foreigners in the Hawaiian Islands, including some of Paea Kamehameha's advisors, were Christians.
And after doing trading in Canton, they were heading down towards the Indian Ocean and eventually going to go around the Horn of Africa.